This is Unit 3, Linear Relationships, Lesson 3, Representing Proportional Relationships. And this is Activity 1, Multiplication. And this is what the authors call a number talk. So you're supposed to solve these problems here mentally, and then have a discussion in the class about different strategies that you might use to solve these problems. So I'm going to go through several of those strategies, and you should practice them. You just copy them, write them down, and then try to talk through them and understand them, explain them to somebody else. Practice what you are doing. So the first one, 15 times 2. In elementary school, you learn to multiply this probably as 2 times 15, and you set it up like this on the right. So I'm going to go through this step by step. I just want you to see the overall structure, that this 2 times 15 is no different than this 2 times, and in parentheses is 10 plus 5 is 15. So these are the same thing, 2 times 15 and 2 times 15. This over here is using the distributive property. So you're going to take that 2 and distribute it and multiply it by the 10 first, and then distribute it to the 5, multiply it by the 5, or the 2, multiply the 5 by that 2 second. So this becomes 2 times 10, and this becomes 2 times 5. So right here is the 2 times 10. that's 20, this 20 right here. And I'm going to show you this in a moment. 2 times 5 is this 10 right here. And finally, you add them together. Now, you probably learned to write down the 0 and carry the 1. Never quite knew what that meant. But that means that this is 10, and so you're placing this 1 up here in the tens place. Then you're multiplying 2 times 10 is 20, and adding one more 10 to that to get 30. So they're really writing in a very efficient way, which is hard to see sometimes. So if you write it out this way, so each line gets its own multiplication. 2 times 5 is 10, and 2 times 10 is 20. This is called expanded form. Actually, you could expand this out even a little bit farther, but that's for a different time, a later time. All right, so if I expand it out a little bit, this 2 times 5 right here is 10. 2 times 5 is 10. So you write the 10 down here. Don't write the 0 and carry the 1 or anything like that. Just write 10 in its place right here. And then 2 times 10, this is not 2 times 1. It's 2 times 10. So this is a 1 in the tens place and a 0 in the ones place. And 2 times 10 is equal to 20. That's this problem right here. 2 times this 10 equals 20. Then add those two together, and you get 30. And I wrote it down here, right next to it. 2 times 5 is 10. That's the same thing over here. And 2 times 10 is 20. Again, that's the same thing as written over here. So this is the distributive property, a way that you're going to do multiplication in the future. This is how you learned in elementary school, so that you could eventually get to this way. So you can just see how to do it. All right, so 15 times 5 tenths. That is the same as 15 times 1/2. And you can rewrite this as 5 tenths times. And I'm going to separate the 15 into 14 plus 1. Because I know what half of 14 is, and I know what half of 1 is just by looking at it. So you could choose, there's a number of other ways that you can choose to do this. I'm going to show you some of those in a moment. But 15 times, or 15 is the same as 14 plus 1. So now I can use the distributive property, just like we did back here. Use the distributive property of what's 5 tenths or 1/2 of 14? 5 tenths of 14 or 1/2 of 14. And you're going to add that to 5 tenths of 1. So what's 1/2 of 1? Well, 5 tenths of 14 is 7. Half of 14 is 7. And half of 1 is 1/2, or 5 tenths of 1 is 5 tenths. Add them together and you get 7 and 5 tenths. Now you might know that just by looking at it, but you should write this out in various ways just to practice. This is all about just practicing different strategies and understanding those different strategies. The more you do that, the more you'll understand the mathematics. So instead of 14 plus 1, you might have chosen to write 12 plus 3, or 10 plus 5, or 8 plus 7. So if you look at each of these, half of 12 is 6, half of 10 is 5, half of 8 is 4, so this is 6, 5, 4, and half of 3 is 1.5, half of 5 is 2.5, half of 7 is 3.5. So each of these, 6 plus 1.5, 5 plus 2.5, or 4 plus 3.5, each one of those will add to 7.5. So this helps practicing multiplying by decimals. If you change each of these to a fraction, it makes sense as well. So you're practicing a whole bunch of different things that you learned in elementary school. All right, I'm going to go through each one of these. I'm going to zoom into each one of these parts in a moment. But this is the whole thing. Looks like a lot, but you're just thinking through it. All right, so 15 times 2500. 2500 is the same as 1/4. I find it personally much easier to think about multiplication as fractions than decimals. And if you practice, I bet that you will too, just with some practice. So 15 times 1/4 is 15/4. So I'm going to zoom in on these. Let's see if yeah, right here. All right, so 15/4 is 15 times 1/4 is 15/4. All right, so this part right here, 12/4 plus 3/4 is right here. So 15/4 is the same as 12/4 plus 3/4. 12 plus 3 is 15, and so that gives you 15 total fourths. Well, 12/4, 12 divided by 4 is the same as 3, and then you just add the 3/4 to that, so that's 3 3/4. And then if you have to write the problem as a decimal value, you know that 3/4 is 75 hundredths. That's like 3/4 of a dollar is 75 cents. So you know that. So this is 3 75 hundredths. I could also write 15/4 as 16/4 minus 1/4. Because isn't 15 the same as 16 minus 1? Well, yeah, it is. Now I can easily divide this by 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. And then I subtract 1/4, or I subtract 25 hundredths, or I subtract 1/4. And I get the same answer, 3 75 hundredths. So this is like having $4 and subtracting 1/4 from that $4. You're going to get $3.75, or 3 75 hundredths, or 3 3/4. They are all the same. So just different ways to do the same problem. And the last way was on the right side. We already did 1/2 of 15. So I'm going to take that 1/2 of 15 and multiply that by 1/2. Well, 1/2 of 15, we figured that out as 7 5/10. Well, what's 1/2 of 7 5/10? Again, think about breaking this up, the 7 5/10, up into easy numbers to multiply by 1/2, or easy numbers to divide by 2. Those are the same things. 1/2 of a number is the same as that number divided by 2, because this 2 is in the denominator. So 1/2 of 6, 1/2 times 6 is the same as 6 divided by that 2. 1/2 of 1 is the same as 1 divided by 2. And 1/2 of 1/2 is the same as, actually this 1/2 divided by 2. That gets a little bit harder to see. All right, so what's 1/2 of 6? It's 3. What's 1/2 of 1? Well, that's 5/10. You guys know that. And what's 1/2 of 1/2? This might take a little while longer to visualize, but if you picture 1/2 of 50 cents, 1/2 of 50 cents, or 2/4, is 1/4, or 25 hundredths. That's one way to think about it. So then you add these all together. 3 plus 5/10 plus 25 hundredths gives you that same 3 75 hundredths answer. So this up here is using the distributive property, 1/2 times 6, and also we're writing 1 5/10 as 1 plus 1/2. So it's really 6 plus 1 plus 1/2, and we're using the distributive property, that 1/2 times each one of those, to to get an answer of 3 75/100. All right, 15, this is the last problem, 15 times 2 25/100. Now this is a combination of, I don't know if I said that or not. Oh, I'm going to have trouble finding this. This is a combination of this problem and this problem. So 15 times 2 25/100 is the same as 15 times 2, that 15 times 2 right there, plus this 15 times 25/100. 15 times 25/100 right there. So they're using the distributive property and rewriting this as 2 plus 25/100. It's 2 plus 25/100. Both of those times 15. All right, so 15 times 2 25/100. Well, we did the 15 times, actually, yeah, we did the 15 times 2. That was the first one we did. And 15 times 25/100, we got 15 times 2 is 30, and 15 times 25/100 is 3 75/100. You add those together, that's 33 75/100. Okay, what I'm doing here is showing you a way to expand your thinking. Basically, check your multiplication of 15 times 25/100. So this 15 times 25/100 I'm rewriting right here as 1/4 times 15. So 25/100 is the same as 1/4 times 15. Now in multiplication, if you take one of the factors, 1/4, and if you if you take half of that, so 1/2 of 1/4, and you take the other factor and you double it, that really remains the same problem, because 1/2 times 2 equals 1. So I'm taking 1/2 times 1/4, and I'm taking 2 times 15. So I'm taking half of one factor, and I'm doubling the other factor. So that remains the same, because in essence, you're still multiplying by 1. So these two problems are the same. They're just written in different forms. 1/4 of 15 is the same as 1/8 of 30. So that 1/8 of 30 comes from right here. 1/2 of 1/4 is 1/8, and 2 times 15 is 30. This is called Russian peasant multiplication. You take half of one factor and you double the other factor, and the answer is still the same. It's just an easier way sometimes of thinking about it. So now we're just going to use this to check. So 1/8 times 30. We already calculated that is equal to 3 75/100, because we did that up here. 15 times 1/4, we did that a while ago, is equal to 3 75/100. Well, if that's the same as 1/8 times 30, then if I multiply this number by 8, I better get 30. So 8 times 3 75/100 is equal to 8 times 3. So I'm going to use the distributive property. 8 times 3 plus 8 times 1/2. I'm separating the 75/100 up into 1/2 plus 1/4. So this is like taking 2 quarters plus another 1/4. So 8 times 1/2 plus 8 times 1/4. That is the same as 8 times 3/4, or 8 times 75/100. So 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 1/2 is 4. And 8 times 1/4 is 2. And you add those together, 24 plus 4 plus 2 is equal to 30. So this is a little bit, actually the word is convoluted. It doesn't seem straightforward, and it's harder, but it's more practice on working with fractions, decimals, and in just ensuring that you're understanding how to do the multiplication. So I know it's hard, but if you write it down, if you talk through it, try to understand it. 1/4 of 15 is the same as 1/8 of 30. So 8 times this number right here better equal 30, because it's equal to 1/8 of 30. So 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 75/100 or 3/4, rewrite that as 1/2 plus 1/4. 8 times 1/2, 8 times 1/4, 24 plus 4 plus 2. and that does in fact equal the 30.